you know, I think teachers, I know I am one of the most lousiest persons as far as my, especially when I came into contact with Dharma. And I think generally, although I was a lousy person, what attracted to me that my teachers, they could have been teaching, they could have been doing Hare Krishna or anything, you know. But what attracted me to them was with the kind of unconditional love that they gave me. And you know, I was a lot of lazy monk, talk a lot of trash, you know. I was a lazy lay person actually back then, never studying, and very bad motivation. But I think it was the compassion that they had me even taking this barbarian and teaching them that really gave me great faith. So I think usually teachers will let you slide on your own. But you, at the very least, as a student, should be open-minded. Like, that's not possible. It's not possible that my teacher could be a Buddha. It's not possible that, that I can be a Buddha in this life. It's not possible that I can see emptiness. This stuff is crazy talk. That kind of mind is an obstacle. You should, at the very least, be very clinical and very even-minded. Put it on the shelf and say, I don't know. You know, I don't know about these things. Maybe so, maybe not. Be very kind of even-minded. And you should be able to set goals and achieve them. That's one of my failings. But it's just like doing anything else in life. It's some people. I had a friend growing up who was a woodworker. And it's like from 12, the dude knew what he wanted to do in life. He very methodically went to the trade school and got the job at this wood place and very methodically got his, so eventually he's doing very high-end work. He knew from way back when he was 12 that he wanted to be a good woodworker, and he took all the proper steps to do it. Similarly, this teaching and Lam in general and the way you should approach Buddhism and the relationship with a teacher should be very methodical, very nice, proper. You want to get a teaching, you ask 3 times nicely. The teacher gives you a lung for the teaching. This allows you to officially study it. Then they give you a word-for-word commentary generally. And then you go, you get the wisdoms. You get the wisdoms from listening, the wisdoms from contemplating their meaning, and then eventually you go into meditation and get the meditation wisdom, the direct realization. He's no longer intellectual, but the direct perception of these truths. And so it should be nicely. It never goes like that. Why? Because your teacher is going to bring, generally a good teacher, will give you all the crap that you've been pulling on people and yourself for your entire life. Generally they will be a mirror, you know, back to you, all the crap. And my personal experience is one of extreme suffering, flopping back and forth between wanting to be really virtuous and wanting to be a bad boy. And I think teachers bring that out in you. They're a very powerful karmic object. They're very powerful. You focus on them, and you generally start to see in them all the negative seeds in your own mind. You see your own the crap. If I can be so, I don't want to say shit, but generally you project on them the shit that you have going on in your own mind, man. And so that's pretty much what a student should have. I mean, I was so stubborn that I probably didn't look at a Tibetan character seriously for until about 10 years into my Buddhist study. I just read English stuff. And my teacher was like I mean, there were 5 Ken Rinpoche and Geshe Roshi. For a white dude, Geshe Roshi was one of the most knowledgeable Buddhist monks there is. He received a Geshe degree. Very few people from the Western world go to the monastery and do that. And then Ken Rinpoche was one of the 5 most knowledgeable Gelug Lamas in the world, and so they were very strict, you know, about, you know, Geshe Roshi, like the ACI classes and the Dharma classes, you got to do homeworks. This is unheard of in Buddhist centers. I don't know if you've ever been to a Buddhist center where they're like, well, you got to do some homework. You know, half the people immediately disappeared. You know, they were serious. Like, I got to do homework? You got to be crazy. What am I, back in high school? What am I, in college? And Ken Rinpoche, very knowledgeable, wanted you to study properly Tibetan. And I'm an American guy, so I think 10 years in, he finally sits me down. This is 10 years later. This is like something out of like 2,000 years ago in India. The teacher then asked the student, so why haven't you studied Tibetan in, the past 10 years you've been hanging around? I'm like, well, I'm really an American. I like cheeseburgers, and I like, I like fast cars, and I'm an American. I'm not a Tibetan. And he goes, I'm not trying to push. He said something like, whether Tibetan culture and language stays in the world or not, doesn't matter. But most of the scriptures are in Tibetan, so if you want to properly study Buddhist scriptures now that you're a monk, you should probably learn Tibetan. But 10 years later, I finally like, okay, maybe I'll look at that language. I want to say one more thing about a relationship, but it has escaped me. I thought of a good metaphor today. And then, oh yeah. So you see the military planes in the sky, they're bombing Iraq, well, these super fighter guys, they're long-range fighters, they have to go behind a tanker plane. I don't know if you ever watched any of these things, it's like, and then somebody lets out, the refueling rod or hose, but it's it's a very complicated relationship they got going on there. One little screw up and it could be disaster. That's like a relationship with a teacher. I mean, if you really want to, it's very easily it could be disaster, very easily you could not get refueled, very easily you couldn't get the teachings. It's like, you really have to pay attention with a relationship, particularly if they're your heart teacher, the one you have most contact with, and if you take tantric initiation. Sutra way, not so bad, but if you take tantric initiations from a teacher, you should relate to them very properly. Because in Tantra, it's a ticket for both of you going to the hells to be improper. So that's about it. I don't know if that's a good metaphor or a good image, but yeah, whenever I've seen those things, it's like, oh my God, that must have taken hours and hours on the that training, the simulator, hours and hours and hours of the simulator to try to, and then in real life trying to get, you're going what, 800 miles an hour, 400 miles an hour up in the air, and you're trying to get this little hose into this little, it just boggles the mind. But that's kind of like related, to get that connection with a teacher. It's very rare. Yahweh Sumra Hongya Ningbo Tang Gyalsu Tang Num Yi Nak Pelang Gyao Nang Dar Te Nam Yi Sup Mo Te Che Dar Ne Shang Xing Xing Tang Tak Xing Tak Ki Shak Char Yi. As far as I'm able, I'll explain the essence of all high teachings of the victors, the path that all the holy sons commend, the entry point for the fortunate seeking freedom. The essence of all high teachings of the victors here, that's this actual teaching, Lobsang Namsang. It's the smallest, it's the briefest Lamrim teaching that Tsongkhapa wrote. Lamrim is steps of the path. As far as I'm able, that's Tsongkhapa's modesty in that particular passage, that shloka. And as far as I'm able, I'll explain. He's basically saying, I'll do the best I can in the 14 verses I've got here. This text was written as a love letter to a student who was in the boondocks.